Well, it's that time again when Amazon is working to create a Lord of the Rings MMORPG. This time, Amazon is teaming up with Middle-earth Enterprises, which is now owned by the Embracer Group holding company, and this partnership of course gives Amazon the rights to develop a game based on the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit, much like The Lord of the Rings Online, a long-time, massively multiplayer online role-playing game set of course in Lord of the Rings that is currently developed by Standing Stone Games. In fact, as a longtime LOTRO player and content creator, I am quite interested how the development of another Lord of the Rings MMO might impact LOTRO. Just like I was a few years ago when Amazon originally announced that they were working on a new Lord of the Rings MMO, a project that was actually eventually cancelled due largely to the conglomerate Tencent acquiring the China-based company that Amazon was working with. So, who knows, this time around, maybe Amazon's Lord of the Rings MMO will actually eventually be released, or maybe it will suffer the same fate as their first attempt. Either way, it is interesting to think and speculate about the game and its potential impacts. So according to Amazon Games, their #1 priority is to be respectful and authentic to the source material, which is of course something that Lord of the Rings fans want to hear. Notably, the game is developed by the same team that brought and continues to work on New World, which I realized that has had a bit of a mixed reception by the MMO community, and personally I thought that New World brought a lot of interesting things to the game and did offer quite an enjoyable gameplay experience. But for me, that enjoyable experience didn't really last that long, and honestly the game started to feel a bit flat and boring after level 30 or so. Still, there is certainly potential with a modern era MMO set in the Lord of the Rings universe in Middle-earth. Perhaps even a game like New World would have been a lot more successful under the skin and lore of Lord of the Rings, as I have actually seen many comments from people that felt the game was shallow and, importantly, lacked a good story. In other words, it was a fairly basic and just uninteresting, generic fantasy world. At this point, I am anticipating that the new MMO, will be broadly similar to New World in terms of just general visuals, gameplay, and systems. The developers at least did note that they have learned from New World's launch experience, meaning they do actually care about creating a better MMO experience with this new game. All of that said, in an interview with GameIndustry.biz, the vice president of Amazon Games did comment that they would move forward with creating the game based on gameplay first and lore second. So, in combination with Amazon Games' previous comments on their highest priority being lore, this really tells me that they have to actually iron out details, and you probably shouldn't get too excited about any specific details at this point because it all just seems to be PR statements. But still, this early in development, I think it is fun to just think about the game, but really my excitement kind of ends there until 1, we just have more information on the game, and 2, importantly, the game actually releases unlike their first attempt. Now, as for LOTRO, what I consider to be my main MMO and my main game really for the past few years, I honestly don't see all that much changing. As I previously mentioned the first time this happened, if anything, I think the competition would actually be beneficial to us LOTRO players. Without competition, companies honestly have little reason to innovate so long as their customer base is happy enough. With LOTRO, there is no real direct competition at the moment. At most, what SSG has to compete with is other MMOs that are not set on Middle-earth, and then other non-MMO Lord of the Rings games. With the unique setting and expansive multiplayer world enabled by the MMO genre, it's really hard for other games to directly compete. But with a new Lord of the Rings MMO, that might push SSG to improve the game more than they otherwise would. That is not to say that I think that the developers actually do a bad job with LOTRO and with innovation, but more so that competition is just a good thing at motivating them to do better. For anybody curious though, Standing Stone Games did previously state that the development of LOTRO would not change. This was when the Amazon Games originally announced their MMO a few years ago. I don't think they have made any updated comments on this new game. But still, LOTRO is actually over 16 years old at this point and uses technology that is almost 25 years old or maybe even older. It's not like LOTRO is going to suddenly be massively changed just to compete with a modern MMO developed with modern technology. In fact, I think this actually protects LOTRO from some of the competition in 2 main ways. So first, LOTRO is an old game, but it has a ton of content. It offers one of the most massive MMO worlds ever, and there are just countless hours of non-repeated content in the game with soon to be 150 levels. And we are even coming up close with double digits in terms of the number of full-fledged expansions, never mind mini expansions and like regular interval major content updates. In fact, since like mid 2010, we are on actually update 36, which is crazy. But also the fact that the game is pretty old with such a dedicated player base also means that it could be hard to actually draw these dedicated players away from the game that they have invested so much time and energy into. And the second protection is that the new Lord of the Rings MMO is probably going to look like an entirely different game, almost from an entirely different genre. LOTRO is a classic MMO, where the only thing that the new Amazon Lord of the Rings MMO probably shares with it is that you play in an open, multiplayer Middle-earth world. I anticipate that in a world where Amazon's MMO actually launches, that these two games would actually coexist and satisfy different gaming desires. It's hard to beat LOTRO in terms of world building, storytelling, and just their massive amount of experience. The developers have a lot of experience, and this shows in the vast sea of content that is widely praised for being true to lore. But it is also hard to deny that the game is just technologically outdated and that the Amazon MMO could capture an entirely different audience that is just turned off by LOTRO's datedness. And I will say that with Amazon games, Lord of the Rings MMO, it seems that the developers are genuinely excited to bring as good of a game as possible to the table, but I really do share some people's skepticisms based on Amazon games' track record and how New World has turned out so far. And again, a lot of the comments feel very PR influenced. Either way, let me know what you think of the announcement and how it might impact LOTRO or the MMO genre even. Basically, I remain cautiously interested and not really concerned about LOTRO. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching everyone.